Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And we will jump to our public hearing for the evening, FY27 budget. Mr. Summers.
Thank you, Mayor Day. Council, so this is the public hearing portion of the budget recommendation for the upcoming fiscal year, which will be fiscal year FY 26-27. So technically it will begin on July 1 of 26 and it will expire on June 30 of 2027. So we're going to go through the budget. A lot of the slides will be very similar to what we looked at when we had the budget presentation on mid-March at your last council meeting. Staff has received no comments. I have not talked to any of you about the budget, and really other than at high levels. So we're going to continue to move forward with the recommendation as is. Happy to pivot and amend wherever the council feels it may be necessary. But a couple quick slides here at a high level, looking at the budget overview. As we talked about before, the Local Government Budget and Fiscal Control Act really governs how local governments in the state of North Carolina can use their money. And the most important step in this is the adoption of a balanced budget every year. So if we look at the key calendar steps and where we are now at the public hearing stage. And what happens tonight is we have a public hearing, and under state law, it is open to anybody that would like to speak to the budget recommendation. This, after the public hearing closes tonight, the budget will have to be available for continued public inspection for at least 10 days before it may be adopted. And I will recommend that you consider adopting it at your next meeting on June the 17th, later this month. So if we look at the operating budget itself, the most important question that I think a citizen can ask of its elected officials, of its senior administration, is how are you going to spend my tax dollar, right? The taxes are very, very precious, and how are you going to use that in the upcoming fiscal year in a way that would reflect the values and their expectations? So what we looked at before is the bulk of the tax dollar, 44 cents, will be going to police and fire. We will see 14 cents on every tax dollar go to public works, 7 cents going to recreation, 10 cents going to debt service, and all of the other services combined, which we collectively refer to as the support services, coming in at 25 cents of every tax dollar. So what you see here is not only aligned with our values, it's statistically consistent with what we have seen over the last decade in the allocation of our tax dollars. If we look at the property tax recommendation, no change from the recommendation that I presented to you in our last budget meeting. I am not recommending a change to the current property tax rate of 44 cents per $100 of assessed valuation. We need to stay here in this space for a little bit longer. I would recommend another year or so before we entertain conversations around tax increases. But as you are aware, there are a lot of challenges facing our economy and facing local governments. The cost of goods and services continues to remain very high. Personnel resources are very, very precious in this space, no more so than in the Greater Triangle region. A lot of competition for talent, and we continue to be an extraordinarily high-growth community. So if we remain at 44 cents on the 44 cents for our tax rate at a current assessed valuation north of $5 billion, that will generate a property tax levy of $22.2 million. If we look at our neighbors around us and kind of understanding how they are navigating these difficult waters, you see a little over half of the communities in Wake County staying consistent with their tax rates, but we are seeing some movement. We are seeing some significant movement in some of the communities trying to stay ahead of the challenges of operating a local government in this economy. We are comfortably, I think, where we need to be. If we look at the operating budget itself, the most important thing to remember here is simply this, is that it must be balanced. That is one of the very unique things about North Carolina. This budget must be balanced on this day of adoption as well as when we close out the fiscal year. It is one of the reasons we have such strong fiscal controls in North Carolina. Key stats on this slide that we talked about last time are, we're seeing a total budget now of about $50.4 million. That represents almost an 11% increase over the previous fiscal year alone. We are continuing to see large budgetary increases, which is reflective of growth and valuation around us continuing to be very, very high. If we look at the general fund revenues, what we're seeing overall is about a 9.86% change in the general fund, moving from about 40.5 million in the current fiscal year, looking at roughly 5 million next year. You know, the numbers move a little bit, percent change. I don't see any significant changes there that aren't captured in a lot of times some budget design, like we talked about at the budget workshop or the budget work session that we had. Permits and fees is an interesting number to me. That's going up significantly, which is also another key indicator that we are seeing tremendous growth in interest around us. You know, property taxes as a percent of our total revenues, we're in a pretty good place. We're not overly dependent on the property tax levy, but it is the bulk of where our money comes from. Current year, we're a little over 50%, going to remain there, forecasted in the upcoming fiscal year at about 50% of total revenues will be coming from the tax levy itself. If we take a look at where we're going to invest this money in operations, the expenditures are fairly consistent. If we look at this slide overall, we see some fairly consistent things here. If you look at where the expenditures, the significant increases are likely going to be associated with people, as well as operational investments. But once again, we're seeing that 9.86% increase on the expenditure side, which is exactly reflective of what the revenue side expenditure looked like. If we peek behind that curtain a little bit more and we wanted to look at expenditures by classification, of the 44.5 million, about 24.45 million is invested in people. Those are the personnel costs. We've got an additional north of $9 million in the operations themselves. We still lean heavily on professional services. That will represent about $2.87 million in the upcoming year. Our capital outlay continues to grow. There'll be significant investments there, and that debt service number is starting to become more of a reality for us. It is reflective of the investments we have made in facilities primarily around us in the fire apparatus. And the transfers out number we talked about was much lower this year because we were going to forego the debt forecasting model for 1 year to make sure we were comfortably where we needed to be to avoid a property tax increase recommendation. Another way of looking at it on a pie chart, very consistent with what we have seen historically over the last decade. About half of every dollar goes to police and fire, public works representing a large chunk after that, and you can kind of see where the rest of the departments kind of come in there. What we see here is consistency, we see stability, we see values alignment, we see a lot of good things in this space when we see this graph every year. If we're going to look at the budget highlights themselves, these are the things that we talked about before. We see 10 new positions recommended in the upcoming year. That represents about a 5.5% workforce growth that is necessary, extraordinarily necessary with the population influx we see. We're going to recommend the reclassification of 4 existing positions. We see benefits increases that are important for us to note. We will continue to fund COLA, making sure that our salaries stay they just stay valid with the current market rate, with goods and services continuing to go up. Cost of living continues to go up consistently. We are going to pay performance, merit, recommending up to a 4% max for the high achieving employees. We see the retirement contributions continuing to be significant expenditures that local governments are required to face. While our health care costs did increase 7.4%, we were able to account for that in the budget design, so the employee-only benefits will be provided at no cost. That is reflected in a $750 to $780 per month increase. The 10 positions that we recommended are primarily seated in the fire department. These are positions that had been heavily forecast before this fiscal year. They represent the investment in the last company of firefighters. We are currently awaiting the arrival of 2 large pieces of fire apparatus, another engine, and a tiller ladder truck. These firefighters will be necessary to make sure that both of those apparatus are operational and fully staffed. We've got an admin assistant in HR, another maintenance worker in public works. We will welcome our first on-staff IT manager since before my tenure in the admin department, and we will continue to grow our finance department by bringing in an accounting specialist in the upcoming year. If we look at where we're putting a lot of our big dollars, the major capital, those capital project ordinances that kind of flow from year to year, but are important to really stop and take a look at because they represent how we're really shaping our community. We have the Law Enforcement Center, which is currently under construction. The law enforcement side of that building will be done in the next month, and then you will have the fire admin suite rounding out construction sometime in the cold weather months late this year, early calendar year 27. You've got continuing improvements on the boulevard, Old Knight Road. We are in the process of purchasing the Lofts building, which houses our finance and HR departments. As I mentioned earlier, we are awaiting the arrival in the next couple of months of the fire engine and the tiller ladder truck. We've got the Hodge Road Park property as a current project now. That property has now been secured. We have the replacement of Fire Station number 2 being a very important strategic priority here that we have funded in the upcoming budget. Exterior improvements to station number 3. We have money available and recommended for property acquisition for what will be fire station number 5. And then we have the Wide Waters extension, the railroad bridge design there for the grade separated crossing. And then we have additional money recommended for Smithfield and First Avenue sidewalks in the design and right-of-way acquisition portion of those projects. So a lot of money being spent in major capital and doing really, really good things to ensure that our community is safe and the investments are being made where our citizens expect them to. If we look at the CIP program, those projects of $10,000 or more typically trying to be funded within the upcoming fiscal year itself. We've got $2.1 million recommended here. Of the notable things that I think are worth mentioning, a continued investment in public art. We have a boulevard study we have a Knightdale Boulevard study coming up. We will continue to make investments in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. We will make vehicle additions in both police and fire. We have a dump truck coming with a plow and a spreader for Public Works, as well as an articulating loader. We will construct a centennial clock, which will be the capstone investment for our centennial celebration next year. We've got comprehensive equipment replacement in there that doesn't warrant really breaking out any deeper than this, but there is investment in equipment replacements across departments. We will make another level of investment in Harper Park with the expansion of the parking lot and the resurfacing of the tennis courts. And then we have a specific Vision Zero project where we will make improvements to the bus stop at McKnight. So good balance here, once again, being consistent with your strategic priorities. If we look at our enterprise and our CIP restricted funds, if you look at the stormwater fund, we're going to invest about $1.6 million. High-level things that we will accomplish there. We need to rehab the lower pond at Knightdale Station. We have 2 infrastructure projects that are currently high on our list, Poplar Street and Flower Street, that we anticipate moving forward on in the upcoming fiscal year. We will adopt our first stormwater master plan. We've got a wash station investment for the shop that is worth noting there as well. And then on the general fund restricted side, we've got $622,000 recommended for local street maintenance and repaving. The pass-through funds that come down through the gasoline tax, very consistent with where those investments have been made historically. So question that I always try to ask and answer for folks is that's a lot of stuff, right? And I don't really expect folks to understand necessarily the dynamics of the local government budget. I think they have 2 questions. The dollars that we give you, how will you spend them? And if you had to explain to me in layman terms, everyday language, why should we trust you as the manager, trust Mayor Day as the mayor, this council, and this senior leadership staff? Why is this a good budget? So for me, I always try to break it out in a way that just says it at a high level. If you look at what the ICMA and the National League of Cities say about what constitutes a good budget, you're going to see themes in the language. But one of the things you always see are strategic community goals, long-range strategic planning. We get into this place where the budget shouldn't be a surprise. The budget should be thoughtful, and it should be based on continuing discourse about what the needs of these local government agencies are. So if we look at Knightdale, as we are very proud of, and we've done a lot of work in this space over the last decade, is we try to lead our community based on the values of the citizens that we serve. Of all the great values that circle in this community, there are 5 that consistently resonate to the top. That we will be a safe community, that we will be connected and inclusive, that we will be sustainable, that we will be active and healthy, and that the men and women who work in this organization will be excellent. They will be reflective of the investment that the citizens make in our livelihood and our well-being. So if we look at the budget, how does it make their lives better? These are the things that I think are important to note and the things that I would encourage all of us to lean into. There's a continued commitment to service delivery here that has been exemplary. All of the critical operational needs are met across all areas of service. This is a fiscally responsible budget. We are good stewards of the tax resources under our charge. I am not recommending a tax increase this year. We can continue to do more with what we have. This supports staff growth. We are continuing to expand staff, not recklessly, but at a rate where it meets the growing needs of this community. It has significant resources in here for employee recruitment and retention, the COLA investment, the merit investment being the most obvious examples of that. We need to make sure that we take care of our folks and that they want to stay here. And a big way to do that is the financial investments we make in them. Commitment to being a safe community, public safety. The law enforcement center will be completed. We will acquire land for Fire Station number 2 in the upcoming year. We will continue to invest in the station on Clifton Road to make it be reflective of the facilities that we're constructing. We have police fleet commitments as well as the large pieces of apparatus for the fire department. And then we have Vision Zero investments there that will support the philosophy and that commitment as a strategic goal. If we look at quality of life investments, we will celebrate the 100-year anniversary of this community. A lot of good things have happened in that time, but we will come together in that space of connectivity and inclusivity and celebrate all the things that make Knightdale a great town. We're going to make continued improvements in Harper Park, which has been wildly successful for us and one of our most popular amenities. We have a plan for a future community center and a park on that property where investments will be made in the upcoming year. We have a new passive park that will begin to take more shape over the next year with Hodge Road. We've got expanded recreational opportunities through our partnership with the United Arts Council and other programming offerings that we have here. We continue to grow that space, and we have an admirable level of special events and expanded public art opportunities for our citizens. If I looked at what does a commitment to the economy look like here, we will continue to support the Commerce Alliance. I recommend that you reinstate the grants and aid program. That money is in there for that. We will continue to support business workshops and networking, business outreach and communication. We have business resource assistance now, where we can help provide access to what grants look like and support businesses if they want to apply for those that are not grants for the town of Knightdale. And everything we're doing in that space really does support our town-wide economic goals. If we look at what the commitment to inclusivity and accessibility looks like, there are massive investments being made in our pedestrian infrastructure through the exactions of the development community and the areas in which we are making improvements. We have emphasis on our future transportation priorities in this budget. We're going to expand our investments in, it's duplicated, I don't really care for the way I did that, but continued investment in pedestrian as well. We've got things in here that celebrate our diversity through our cultural events, and we have an affordable housing trust fund that continues to be funded and an important part of who we are. And if we look at commitment to environmental stewardship, stormwater maintenance program is in here, which is the backbone of what that enterprise fund really is, investments in our stormwater infrastructure, and then the master plan itself. So if I was to look at this and I was to sit down and have a conversation with any stakeholder in our community, I, as the manager, will be extraordinarily proud of the things that we do and have continued to do for a prolonged period in Knightdale. So I'm here to answer any questions you have. And after that, we are to open it up to receive public comment from anybody that may be here that would like to offer public comment. After that, my recommendation to you would be this, that you close the public hearing. You direct the town clerk to place this budget recommendation on your June 17th, 2026 meeting agenda for consideration of adoption per General Statute 159-12. I was trying to pace it, not go too fast, but what questions can I answer for you?
Any questions or comments?
So
This is, as always, a great budget. It's very comprehensive. It's taken into account so many of the initiatives that we as a council have really placed emphasis towards, particularly through our strategic planning, our retreat. So you guys have done amazing work on it, as always, and thank you for the commitment to this and the deliverables that it will bring. How are we positioning, you know, when we look at the landscape currently, like with the increase in fuel costs and things like that, knowing what that looks like in terms that we aren't making much increase in our sort of public safety budgets, do we have that sort of cushion already baked in as we don't know what this may look like, and that affords us some range of motion?
We put in very robust expenditure estimations for fuel is the best way I could answer that.
Yeah.
Making assumptions, worst case scenarios, I think would be the best way to describe that. The last thing I want to do as a manager, the last thing that Dustin, Suzanne, or Antoine want to do in their roles is be in a position where we have to walk in here and say, oops, we need to back up and we need to really reposition this. They're very aggressive estimations. So the goal, my expectation is simply this is, it's better to over budget and underspend than under budget and overspend. So we build that in. That is under Antoine's charge, and that is an area of pretty significant conversation because it's a big driver.
That's fair. Otherwise, we end up having to go to the bicycle patrols.
Yeah.
You know, in talking with Chris Parker and his farewell, Emerald Isle has a budget of, I mean, it's 10 cents, and I think they're going up to 10.5 cents. So if you guys could get us down to that cents,
okay,
that would be great.
I
And they're getting new fire apparatus as
They
well.
They do. Man, if I could just have some of the valuation that our beachfront properties have. Other questions, observations?
I just have one quick question. I'm figuring the grants and aid program is going to be a very popular program. I guess the question is, what does that look like for the public?
Right, so what it'll be is really two steps in the process. One is to give you a dollar amount to work with. So in the budget, I've recommended $25,000. This is a space that we haven't been in for a while. What we will do at an administration level is bring you a program, a recommended program. So it gives you two touch points. One is the dollar amount. Does it feel right? Do you want to do it? Do you not want to do it? Do you want to go up or down on the dollar amount? And then on the programming side, what we will do is we will give you a recommendation, if it's what you choose to fund in the budget, that is statutorily compliant. So this is what the application process looks like, this is what selection would look like, and more importantly, this is what reporting on those public dollars would look like coming back our way. So I guess the best way to answer your question is, if we went into it and it was wildly popular, then you'd have to make a budget decision in the upcoming fiscal year. Do we want to hold pat with where we are, or do we want to kind of grow that investment? But my thoughts are simply this, is to recommend a safe dollar amount for this year, to give you an outlined program that you can feel confident is legal and in the spirit of what the state statutes recommend. And then I'm probably going to whisper that let's try to keep it aligned with what the values of the community are. That way we're kind of maintaining that symmetry.
And I echo comments too about really great job from staff and from town manager's office, particularly sort of looking at the landscape, looking all around us, sort of, you know, seeing what others are doing. I guess for me, and we'll get there next year, but on the sustainability plan, I was really hoping we could get going on that. Is the thought that would be a pretty major expenditure with bringing in a consultant versus us trying to just peel off little bits here and there? Is there anything we could do this year at all in that regard?
So answer to the first question is it was one of the casualties of the budget reduction. It got left on the cutting room floor, so to speak. It was estimated at $250,000. So it was one of the larger expenditures that didn't get recommended for funding. So we have had this conversation a lot. And I think what I want and what I want to find a way to do for you is you do need to adopt a sustainability plan at some level. Let's be clear. I think there's something that staff believes in. It's something that I support. What that actually looks like and what are the outcomes that you're looking to achieve, I think that's where an outside consultant comes in and helps us scale it right. But I do believe short of that, there's an opportunity to communicate all of the things we're already doing, right? to me, and I think Jason would support this if he was standing beside me, the greatest investments we make in being good stewards of the environment is in the development approvals that you approve regularly. That is where you're going to kind of really lay a solid foundation for the future. Now, I'm not suggesting bury your head in the sand and say that's enough. No, not at all. But for me, I think an initial step for me would be telling the story and articulating in a way that we do take this seriously. Maybe we just don't do as good a job of telling our citizens everything we're doing. But a plan is coming. But unfortunately this year, with the priorities, the strategic priorities as they lined up, that was one that feels financially like it's going to need to be in the upcoming or the next fiscal year.
And I know that was a large expenditure, and I do feel like it is something to take very seriously and get somebody that can really do it right. You're right, we do a lot of good things. I know Councilman McDonald's already brought up a couple ideas and thoughts that I think we would all be very supportive of. And so, and years go by pretty quick, so, but
Sure.
thank you for that explanation.
Yes, sir.
All right. Any additional? All right. If not, thank you, Mr. Summers. And thank you for those questions. Thank you for the comments as well, connecting the budget and all of the work that goes into it. And also thank you for tying that into the strategic plan and what we have. So now this is a public hearing item, so we will open the floor. If there is anyone here tonight who wishes to speak on this item, you may come forward at this time. All right. If not, then I will bring it back to council for any last questions, any last comments, or a motion to close.
If there are no further comments, I will make the motion to close the public hearing and direct the town clerk to place the FY27 budget recommendations on the June 17, 2026 meeting agenda for consideration of adoption per General Statute 15912.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Majority approves. Motion carries. So now we'll move to our development services update.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, I only have two quick things for you. From my perspective, then I'm going to turn it over to Kevin and let him give you a good development update with some exciting new projects. So the first thing I have to discuss tonight is opportunity zones. If you're not familiar with opportunity zones, this was part of the federal tax legislation reform. And the first one was done in 2018. It's a 10-year program. It allows for investors to defer capital gains invested in opportunity zones for a certain time period. It also allows for a reduction in the capital gains tax if the investment is held for at least 5 years, and then it actually allows for an elimination if it's a long-term hold. And so as part of that initial program in 2018, we worked with Wake County Housing Revitalization and also with Wake County Economic Development. And there were two tracks in Knightdale at the time that qualified. You can see them in kind of the dash color, 2018 to 2028 eligible tracks. And initially we thought we would see a whole lot of investment from these types of opportunity zone funds. And we thought it would be a way to really catalyze growth in these areas. As you can see from this map, neither of those areas qualify in the new program. So maybe that is a good sign that it may have been an effective program, but we really didn't see all that much investment from the actual opportunity funds we saw. It helped to fund the Gardens project with the Raleigh Rescue Mission, and it also helped with financing of the Lost and Knightdale Station residential. And so there may be a few other projects we're just not aware of if they were opportunity funded or not, like Village Gate and a couple of the build-to-rent communities. But we do believe that at least there was some investment made using that those qualifying census tract. And so right now on Friday, the county manager's office is working on putting together a list of the new qualifying tracts in Wake County that they want to present to the Commerce Department, and ultimately the governor has to make a recommendation of what census tracts to recommend to the federal government to be included in the Opportunity Zone program. in this cycle, there are 2 tracks in Knightdale that do qualify and are eligible. One is what I'm going to call 54113. That is a pretty substantial track along Knightdale Boulevard. It is a shared census tract, so a portion of that is in Raleigh's jurisdiction and a portion of that is in Knightdale's jurisdiction. But it does qualify. There are a lot of things that the Commerce Department is trying to prioritize with their recommendations, including business development and job creation, housing affordability, and strategic local revitalization. There's a lot of opportunity in that census tract for all those things to occur. It's home to Knightdale Gateway, some empty parcels where developers have looked at for increased like industrial type development, as well as Legacy Oaks, Hinton Oaks, several Merritt, the Knightdale Marketplace, and Steeple Square Shopping Center. So there are some areas in there that we would, hope and could see this could really benefit potentially. The other track, 54403, it has, it's mostly in Wendell, that track, but the portion that is in Knightdale is what we have identified in our comprehensive plan as our future innovation center area. But there's a large sewer expansion that is necessary in order for that area to kind of be opened up for development. Being in an opportunity zone could help alleviate some of the cost with what it takes to extend that sewer, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee that that investment would be made into that track. So what we're recommending to do is to work with the county manager's office and see if we can nominate 54.1.13, kind of that big census tract, as kind of our top one. And if there's an opportunity for 2, no pun intended, opportunity zones, we would look to see if that other one would be eligible potentially as well. We know that the city of Raleigh will likely put forward quite a few of their census tracts that qualify there. I know that the town of Garner has some interest in one or two of their qualifying tracts. The town of Wendell is not going to necessarily take a proactive approach to nominate any, and a lot of the communities in the southwest part of the county don't have any qualifying tracts. So we think there's an opportunity to get one, maybe both, if funded, and then these will be eligible as of January 1, 2027, and then the 2 tracks that are already eligible will remain eligible until the end of 2028. So because that was a 10-year program. So just wanted to kind of share that information with you. Ask any questions you may have. If it's tax advice, I'm probably not going to be that helpful on how to invest here, but happy to help if I can. If there's any questions or thoughts.
Just a quick question. So with these new tracks, the eligibility will be 10 years for them as well?
I believe so, yeah.
Any downside to the opportunity zone or just a win-win situation?
I think initially when we went forward in 2018, we were like, this is a win-win, why wouldn't we do this? I think the downside that we could potentially see is, especially with the first 2 tracks that were eligible, they were more rural tracks than this one. And so a lot of the original folks that kind of came out to us are the typical kind of institutional investors for LIHTC affordable housing development. And that area was really not the most appropriate place to build that. So there's a lot of conversations around, trying to find the right appropriate place for housing affordability. I think one of the challenges with having, potentially 4 tracks eligible, that's a lot of opportunity zone funding that could come into Knightdale at one time. And so while that could be a benefit, that could also be kind of a negative thing of like a lot of investment at one time. And I think, the concentration of affordable housing, build to rent, these are long-term hold investments. So it's not something where you build a, subdivide land and sell tracts. You can't do that and still be eligible for the capital gains tax relief. So you're going to hold it for a long term. So you have potential for the concentration of, a lot of multifamily, one product type, housing affordability not being scattered as we see. And then, we're already in a pretty high growth environment, and could it kind of light that up a little bit and increase the growth pressures that we already have. But I think, there's a lot of pros, also the redevelopment opportunities that exist there, the investment, increased investment, and then the potential for more of those mixed use and employment centers. This kind of, the Opportunity Zone Fund mitigates a lot of the upfront risk, where you see like the lofts at Knightdale Station. We're really able to kind of realize our vision for more of a mixed use product type, and then things like the gardens are able to take advantage of that for some financing.
And any of it would still have to go through our approval process.
That's correct.
And plus, with the LaTeX, right, they have, it's a competitive cycle, right? So you can't have but so many within a proximity of each other, but then, of course, that doesn't preclude private investment in terms of sort of low-income or workforce housing, but I still see it as a real positive in terms of that initial investment.
So did you say it was possible for somebody to just buy and hold, or they have to actually do some of the other, some investment?
My understanding of the way the tax credits work is you have to purchase the property and then you have to reinvest 100% of what you paid for it back into the property to qualify. So you can't just buy an asset and hold it and not make any investment into it and use opportunity zone funding and receive the benefits. You have to buy the property and make an initial investment in order to qualify.
And I didn't know if that had to be done right away, or, as it's sold would be a tax consequence, obviously.
Yeah, there's certain dates, at least in the first opportunity zone tax legislation, there were certain dates. So the date of the sale for whatever you're using for the investment fund, there's a certain date that had to be done by, and then a certain date that you had to make the qualifying investment. So it's all kind of tracked through that 10 years to ensure that it is serving the purpose, which is, revitalization of qualifying tracks.
And, well, one of the things you mentioned, sort of a challenge, is that somebody could wait a while, for example, and sort of tie up a large tract. So, yeah, if we could tie this together with some incentives or something that we think about that could really bring some things that we're really looking for, I think is a win. I would try to, I think you're right, to concentrate on more towards our town center, or what we think, is closer to where we want it to be, versus pushing so far out in a way. But if we could get two, that'd be great.
All right. Thank y'all. The next thing I have is our annexation agreement with Raleigh. North Carolina general statutes allow for annexation agreements to help for orderly growth planning. We've had a annexation agreement with Raleigh since 1994. The last one was adopted in October of 2006, and is due to expire in October of this year. If you look at the map on here, the current line and the proposed line are the same. They're one and the same, so there's no changes proposed here as far as our line of annexation with the city of Raleigh. The city of Raleigh actually heard this and approved it at their council meeting on May 19th. We, at our last meeting, set the public hearing for this to be at the June 17th meeting. And so once we have our public hearing and action on it, we can go ahead and have both ordinances signed by the appropriate municipality, and then we record that with the Register of Deeds office, and then that's valid for another 20 years. So 2046 will be the next renewal, and I'll see y'all then. Maybe I won't. But that's just an update on that and that process. Happy to answer any questions, but we're looking to kind of get this complete at the June meeting. We're a little late in the process, but we could certainly have that conversation. We did look at if there were any opportunities, to make smoother lines at certain parcels and things like that, but due to where current municipal limits are and ETJ, that it would take essentially an act of the legislature to reverse ETJ for us to be able to kind of move our line. So we determined it was probably in our best interest to just keep it where it is. That's all I have. I'll let Kevin come up and give the development update. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll take you through our development updates with some updates, new projects, and other things to share. So first, looking at the numbers like we do every month, I think what two numbers really jump out at me are the lots under construction. If you go back to February, you can see we were at 2,500 lots under construction. We're up to now almost 3,700 lots under construction. So those are projects that have moved into the initial construction phase, clearing and grading. That's Robertson Crossing, Haven at Griffith Meadow, and the collection are three examples of that. And so that's just adding more and more inventory to our housing stock. And then residences under construction, that's a pretty big drop. I think I may have calculated the May number incorrectly, but either way, it's still a big drop, and that is not because we've had large multifamily projects receive a CO. That is just all single-family and townhomes receiving COs between May and June. We've had a lot of new residents moving into their homes over the last month, and so that's exciting to see. And then going back to previous years again, back to 2022, you can see how the trends kind of go up and down, but fairly consistent overall. Moving into some actual plans that we wanted to share with you, we recently sent out an update to Boulder Ridge. So the property owner this time has reached out to us to try to get a plan together that is marketable for that site and creating something that's more consistent with the town's vision. Last year, the applicant at the time submitted a master plan. We reviewed it, and before the joint public hearing, the applicant chose to withdraw that plan. And so this does show some updates. I think there are still improvements that could be made, including creating more vertically integrated mixed use, connectivity to adjacent parcels, expanding the scope. So the property directly to the north, east, and west, those are all on the market now. So being able to kind of bring those parcels under the same umbrella and expand out a little bit, and then also connect to the Mingo Creek neighborhood and provide connectivity to some of the neighborhoods that are recently approved further east on Old Faison Road would create more of a consistent project with our comprehensive plan. And then also this is within the River District. It's a trail-oriented development, and so how can we bring the trail through the site as a main feature and build off of that instead of what you see now and what you saw with the previous plan was the trail kind of running around the perimeter of the site. And we have some examples that we're happy to share of projects that have been able to achieve that a little bit better. So we talked about the comprehensive plan and what that calls for. Happy to answer any questions about this, but again, it's still very conceptual. They don't even have a developer at this time. And so should this move forward, hopefully we'll be able to see some of the recommended improvements incorporated into it.
So when you said property owner is looking at this group, property owner is a corporation?
No, single person. Yeah.
Are they working with
They're working with McAdams, who developed the master plan for the previous submission.
traditional path that we normally see, so I was curious, like, what we would do.
Yeah, it is a little bit different, but I will commend the property owner, making that investment and taking those steps to hopefully get something that fits our vision, but also can attract the types of developers that we're looking for.
I think just my first high-level takeaway is, we've got the part over there that's no longer a pipe dream on Hodge Road and some of that neighborhood land. And so definitely looking for the connections across the street right there at Hodge and bringing that into the trail.
Was any of this slated to connect into Mingo Creek subdivision?
No,
Okay.
there's an intervening parcel just to the north
Yeah.
that is also zoned highway business, owned by the development firm City Plat.
Oh,
We've
yeah.
had a lot of conversations, but nothing officially submitted there. But, if there's synergy there, and that connection certainly can be made to some existing stubs in that area.
Well, I'm liking what I'm seeing so far as especially leaning in on the environmental side, some treatments around wetlands and underground SCM, something, take up less space, maybe, if they could incorporate some pervious pavement, things of that nature. Right now, it looks like and again, I know it's a sketch, but there's the two parcels that are out on the corner
Yep.
at Hodge. How much is that going to require to get full frontage improvements along sort of that aspect, would that require additional easements or right-of-way?
Potentially, the right-of-way through there is pretty large, but again, those two parcels are also on the market right now. So if they're able to incorporate those and create that connectivity, we did talk about that with the engineer when we sat down with them to review this, about even if those parcels aren't included, creating a connected streetscape along Old Faison and Hodge Road to, you know, create something that's a little bit more consistent would be something that we're looking for.
The previous proposal, did they get all the way to a TIA or?
They did, yes.
Out of curiosity, did it call for anything, like high level, what was the?
If I recall correctly, it recommended a signal at Hodge Road and Bingo Bluff Boulevard. That was pretty much it as far as the recommended improvements go. Even with all of the bottleneck on Hodge Road at the bridge and the kind of physical constraints there.
So they, in their illustrations, they have some multi-story buildings. Are they thinking or proposing that, or that just sort of there?
So the three red buildings on the bottom of the screen are identified as commercial buildings, but I don't think it's necessarily defined or intended at this point to be multi-story buildings. From what we could tell, they would primarily be single-story commercial buildings. Buildings I and J, if I can see that correctly, kind of in the middle of the site that has some hatching on it, would be vertically integrated mixed-use buildings with either ground floor retail or live-work units. Live-work units were proposed in that area previously as well. We'll continue talking about that and hopefully have some updates in the near future. Next, wanted to bring some updates about Parkside at Westlake. So the developer has approached us with some news about possibly accelerating the commercial development at the corner of Hodge, or at Pool and Smithfield Road. So the image on the right is the master plan that was approved, showing multiple commercial and retail and office buildings along Pool and Smithfield Road. Can't get Hodge out of my mind. And then the imagery on the left shows what the proposed village green that would be developed in the first phase of the overall Parkside at Westlake, some of the imagery there. And the rest of that commercial node there would be developed in later phases in 2030 and beyond. Their current proposal would accelerate that and start development as soon as 2028. And this is the very conceptual plan that they've submitted to us at this point, with a grocer there on the right side of the screen, and then single-story retail buildings rein the parking lot with some of the public gathering areas between those buildings and this rural preservation corridor along Smithfield Road. This potentially may require an update to the master plan. This does show a pretty significant reduction in overall non-residential square footage. So previously, the entire site had about 158,000 square feet of office, retail, and multi-use square footage. This site has just under 80,000 square feet, so about half of what was originally proposed. That does not include some of the smaller commercial spaces that are incorporated on the west side of the project also.
Just speaking for myself, I think that that's super cool.
So the grocer has shown a lot of interest in that, and so that's really kind of driving the timing on that. They haven't shared who the grocer is.
I guess the minimizing of the amount.
Oh, that I'm not sure of. I think there's a little bit of reorganization. So everything on kind of the south side of the screen here was all of the retail and office. The four buildings that are along Pool Road, those are multi-story buildings with either office or residential above. And what they're proposing now is just all kind of single-story retail.
Because like, shoot me if I'm wrong, but like, wasn't the whole point of the phasing plan and stuff like that was to wait until it could support that level?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like every other resident, I love to do grocery store, but.
Okay, thank you for that feedback. Let's see. So next we'll move on to some sketch plans. These are some items that you've reviewed recently, but first wanted to start with the North Side Compassion Project. We've talked a lot about this, and we're hoping that they're moving towards a master plan submittal this summer, but they have run into some obstacles that would require site development allowances on the site. Some things we've talked about, some things we haven't. So first, the right-of-way improvements along Maple and 2nd Avenue. Those add a significant cost to the project, and if a master plan is submitted, they are likely to request a site development allowance to either forego those right-of-way improvements, look for a way to partner with the town on the cost of those improvements, or phase them in a way that they get done in the future with the quadplexes kind of coming first. The second site development allowance is regarding parking. So that adds parking spaces, parking lots add a pretty significant amount of cost to the project overall. But when you zoom out a little bit, just to the north is the parking lot for the Knightdale Baptist Church. And they have worked out an agreement where if this is approved, those residences would be able to park within that parking lot to help reduce some of the impervious surface on that site. Kind of another alternative is if the right-of-way is improved, that would add some on-street parking spaces in front of the site, a little bit closer. And then finally, the mixed-use building standards. We talked about this at our most recent meeting, and they originally proposed vinyl siding. However, they have agreed to hardy plank siding on the buildings with some masonry as well. So we've got them to kind of move in the right direction on architecture, but wanted to hear if there's any feedback on primarily the right-of-way improvements and on-site parking, or if additional information is needed from the applicant.
Do we have an estimate of the dollar amount cost of the right-of-way improvements?
The estimate that they provided us was about $200,000. That is also something that we submitted to Campo for a matching grant, but that didn't score well.
That whole area of town is just lacking a lot of infrastructure just in general, you know, curb and gutter, sidewalks, just everything. So it's, I mean, it would be nice to get some, but it's not going to complete everything either. So it's,
Right.
Could almost see another project that comes back later and sort of completes everything. Certainly at a minimum, donating, you know, we shouldn't have to go back and purchase right. Somebody shouldn't have to go back and get right away.
Yeah, that they would, you know, if that's approved, they would certainly dedicate the right-of-way, the ultimate right-of-way there, so that it does become a little bit easier to do in the future.
So, I'm just kicking around another idea on this. So you're talking about affordable housing or vulnerable housing for vulnerable populations, I'm assuming. So if we start thinking about our affordable Knightdale housing fund or some other opportunities, I mean, there could be something there. I'm not saying it should be, but just something to think about. Also, I definitely like their thought process of using shared parking, because at some point, I think downtown, we would all like to see less parking in general. Also,
Yep. And just north of the parking lot on Main Street is a bus stop. 2 bus stops on either side of Main Street that would be within walking distance that could provide additional modes of transportation.
I guess I wouldn't mind to see just a set of plans that sort of showed what they would be required to do, and just for a little bit of clarity, you know, and then sort of the zoomed out, because at some point it's just going to stub out to nothing for a while.
Thank you. The next item is something that we received from the federal level. The post office is considering some additions and site improvements to that site. It's zoned NMX. They are proposing to add parking, lighting, make some pavement repairs, and enhance and improve some of the landscaping on the site as well. I've mentioned that federal projects are exempt from local zoning regulations, so they're proposing to add about I think 11 or 13 spaces on the front side of the site, close to the public right-of-way there. They would be able to do that without getting a variance, whereas any other use would be required to get a variance or put the parking on the side or rear. We're reviewing this for additional items for consistency with our UDO, but they are not required to incorporate our comments. So we're looking at areas where we can make some improvements, pedestrian connectivity, right-of-way improvements if possible. Again, things like lighting and making just the site generally safer, more appealing. Landscaping. Yep. There you go. And then the last sketch plan that we have is Planet Fitness. So they're proposing a 3,700 square foot expansion. It's on the back side of the building. So it would be impacting the loading bay in the back, but it does not cut off any circulation back there. Would make it. Yes. And so that would be a building permit that we also see submitted fairly soon. Construction is probably going to start by the end of summer on that. Moving on to the master plan projects. The first is the Riverview Commons master plan that was submitted. This was reviewed by the Development Review Committee last month. And we talked about in the big picture items that we've been talking about with them since the beginning. River district theme, mixed use development, reducing parking. They're way over on the parking, exceeding our parking maximum by a lot. And then placemaking, building design, kind of creating a really welcoming entry into Knightdale as people are getting off the future 540 as they're coming along Pool Road that is getting some upgrades as part of the 540 connection there. They submitted a master plan that looked like this, and they resubmitted a master plan that still looked like this. They haven't made any changes, and right now they are saying that the drive-through uses and auto-dependent uses along the perimeter of the site are more of a conceptual phase of the project, and they're focused mainly on the grocer and the retail buildings in the center of the site. They were originally scheduled to go to a joint public hearing this month, but we're also working with NCDOT to finish their review of the TIA, that is still under review by DOT. So that this will wait until we get an updated plan and have that TIA reviewed. But if there are any questions or any feedback, I'm going to take that.
Definitely would like to see more of the, the small area plan, the River District small area plan. The architectural renderings are not particularly exciting. It kind of just reminds me, like it looks like a food lion. And I know in general, we try to stay away from branded buildings. We actually already have, I think, this exact building in town. Was my first impression was this looks like Steeple Square. Kind of concerned about the number of drive-through, very auto-dependent buildings. So if we're kind of putting those on there as a concept, maybe we need to unconcept those.
Yeah, I definitely would lean in on that auto-dependent uses. It seems like there's opportunity for shared parking there. I think on their parking, they probably looked at it says bank, auto service, another building, each and every single one, and just maxed out the parking for each and every one. And I'd almost rather see a strip, with shared parking, but it doesn't feel like it's tying into what we want here in this this region of town, and sort of what we talked about for what we'd like to see for the River District. And it's it's going to be right up the street from 540 interchange, so it just feels like there's a lot more that can be done there. It's going to be on a future bus route. There's a lot more than we could do than just have another huge parking lot with a few buildings stuck in it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, and the other thing too that I was going to chime in and say is that I feel like rather than getting a unique development proposal here in what we've decided is a unique part of town with our small area plan, we kind of got to copy and paste Food Lion Shopping Center. I can almost see it. There's going to be a Chinese restaurant right there. There's going to be a CVS. There's, it's just, you can see this copy and pasted all over most of the state of North Carolina. And I don't think that's at all what we're looking for here. We're certainly looking for something more custom, more high end than this.
Kevin, question not just particularly to this. How much input or influence do you all have when it comes to the internal movement and traffic designs of these projects? And the reason I was asking, like I'm looking at this design for where they have proposed landscape, right? Just random. But then I also think about like the Lowe's shopping center over here, right? The sight line, when you get to the end of some of these actual parking corridors, is absolutely terrible. Like you can't see because of the vegetation. You don't have that sight triangle, and by the time you're nosed out, cars coming through at a decent little clip, it's precarious. And so, do you all have any influence into sight triangles and design executions with internal operations of these developments?
Yeah, certainly. I think our UDO does a good job of giving us the power to work with developers to create something that is safe for motorists and pedestrians. I think this project could benefit from a lot of pedestrian safety improvements internal to the parking lot. I think there's really one kind of sidewalk that runs through the middle of it, but it leaves a lot of pressure points and potential conflicts for pedestrians through there. We've seen examples of UDO requirements from across the state that kind of treat large commercial parking lots differently than a parking lot for a smaller site or a single non-residential use, that emulates or requires that kind of the main strip through there, the main entry is designed for a local kind of main street standard. So it beefs it up a little bit. It has buildings coming off of it and parking in the rear. Things that we're trying to do here that we've steered those developers to try to see some improvement here. I think to your point, Councilor Evans, that there are certain techniques and methods. What comes to mind for me is crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED. It's this practice where you kind of look for those areas where either the physical or natural environment is creating unsafe situations. And so one of the principles in CPTED is having landscaping that is low and high and provides a gap in the middle so you can see people, people can see you. And so incorporating those sorts of things are what we try to push developers towards.
If we got to a point, I remember this conversation last time, like if we say, well, maybe there's just a few little tweaks on the grosser side of the road, what I understood was, well, that's where they're ready to go. They truly are ready to go, but sort of the southern part, we just don't quite have it all that figured out. But we want to put something on the plan so that we can sort of get you all feeling good about it. Is there a way for us to separate those out? I know that, I think Jason said last time, we want to see something down there that gets approved as an overall concept, but is there a way to sort of separate those two that we can have confidence that they can come back later for approval on that other piece?
I certainly think so. You look at Parkside at Westlake, and that was considered a bubble plan. We're talking now today about changing that a little bit and reducing some of the square footages in that area. But they had additional elements within the rezoning, the design guidelines, and the uses, limiting the uses, but providing enough uses that could attract retail and non-residential uses there, and create a sense of what the buildings are going to look like at the end of the day. So there's certainly a possibility to do that. My concern with this is if they're saying all the out parcels are a bubble plan or conceptual, and this gets approved as is, well, this is a site-specific development plan, and they could come in, even if they are conceptual, in their words, they could come in with building permits for a gas station and drive-through a bank and everything like that with a site-specific approved development plan. And, you know, until they make those changes, we certainly wouldn't be comfortable with moving a project forward that is so inconsistent with our regulations and our guidance.
Sounds like about the only way they could do it is subdivide the parcel and just say, we're only looking at that and not putting in this. I mean, that's the only path forward, it sounds like, in the scenario I laid out.
Yep, that's a possibility as well. That would still likely have to go through a rezoning if they are just looking at the grocery store. Depends on what the minimum square footage would be at that point. It is currently zoned highway business, so there are some non-residential uses that would be allowed, but certainly not to this scale. We will continue to work with them on that. So one project that is going to a joint public hearing in June on the 18th is the conversion of the house at 5845 Farmwell Road to an office. It's just under 0.6 acres and a 1,600 square foot house to the office conversion. They did receive a number of variances at a Board of Adjustment meeting earlier this month, primarily for parking or screening and landscaping and right-of-way improvements on Farmwell Road. But again, this will be coming for a joint public hearing later this month, and then a final decision as soon as August. And then next would be overlook on Old Cruise. We discussed this just last week, and in the interim, the developer has made some proposed changes to the plan. First, that all homes would be pre-wired for EV chargers, and the single-family homes would be outfitted to facilitate the installation of solar panels. A professionally designed pollinator garden would be installed as well. Townhome buildings on Old Cruise Road that back up to those, so those are front-loaded, facing into the site with the backyards facing out towards Old Cruz, and a rural preservation corridor between the two. But they would break those up so that townhome buildings have no more than 4 units on those front-loaded townhomes there. They have aligned a green space in the middle of the project. They had some connectivity through there, but they would continue that all the way through and create what they're calling an overlook plaza with landscaping, hardscaping, public art, and pedestrian connectivity throughout the site. They're also proposing a dedicated food truck area with off-street parking and power hookups in the blue there. And then we would work with them on getting the design of the retaining wall that kind of separates the front of those rear-loaded homes from the rest of the area to create something that is not just a steep wall in that area, but something that's more appealing and maybe a little bit better of a design there. So the applicant is hoping to bring this back on June 17th.
So where would you think, we talked just briefly about additional parking, the homes that don't front onto a public street, you know, that are the furthest south along that street, there would have to be some additional parking somewhere in there if they had guests or something.
Yeah, I'm gonna see if this does work. Great. So there would be opportunities kind of at the ends of the alleys here for some additional parking. Potentially as you approach the local street that runs through there. So there would be, I think, a lot of opportunities for additional parking. And then some maybe around the food truck area, not just 2 spaces, but maybe some additional off-street parking spaces in that area.
Yeah, it just seems like it needs to connect pretty, like if you parked in a blue box, for example, you know, you could walk back basically to those units
Yep.
pretty easily.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm assuming their address is going, is that you said that's a public alley? Is that?
Yes, this is going to be a public alley. This alley is public, and that is to serve utilities to all of the homes that are on either side of it. This alley is private. And then this Street A, and Street B are public as well.
So they didn't have any on-street parking anywhere.
They have on-street parking along Street A. Yeah. They had more, especially on this side, but we were concerned about circulation, so they reduced that. We also wanted to create a more consistent streetscape with Old Mill Bernie Village to the west, continuing through here and connecting hopefully one day to Brio Village to the east. So trying to create something more consistent. All right. And so now moving on to construction drawing stage. First, we wanted to share an update or some considerations that the developer of Faison Reserve is considering, potentially changing some of the lot sizes for single-family and townhomes. Right now, they have approval for 184 single-family homes and townhomes. A builder, Ashton Woods, has kind of emerged as a potential builder in this area. And with their specific products and looking at the home sizes, they are considering some requests to change some of the home sizes. So what was approved with the PUD and master plan when back in just over a month ago was a number of different lot sizes. So townhome lots from 22 to 24 feet in width, single-family rear-loaded homes from 26 feet, 32 feet, and 40 feet to provide a variety of housing types. The 26-foot kind of row homes would be really narrow and a new product introduced into Knightdale. However, they are requesting changes to allow for just 40-foot wide rear-loaded homes and 20 to 24-foot wide rear-loaded townhomes. And so that would remove the 26 and 32-foot wide rear-loaded townhome lots, although they have a number of different products that could fit on those lots to create some variety. And the lots could go up to as wide as 55 feet. This does result in some changes in the lot counts and density, so you would lose 3 of the rear-loaded lots, but gain 6 or 7 townhome lots. So that's a net increase in density, potentially would require an amendment to the previously approved plan from just over a month ago there. So happy to answer any questions, gather more information if needed. We're hoping to get some additional information, but this does kind of move it away from some of the goals within the comprehensive plan, creating housing diversity, as well as the affordable Knightdale plan. And something that I think set this project apart was having those different housing types spread throughout. I think they did a really good job of incorporating the different housing sizes and not just having a pod of townhomes here and single-family homes here. They had a lot of variety throughout there.
So I feel like I think we recently said this in a public hearing that, or at least in public, that, you know, it seems like we've recently gotten a lot of developments approved, and then when it comes time to actually go in and build, there's a lot of coming in and watering down what got approved. And I don't like it.
Understood.
So what specifically would change along the parcels to the east? I know there was a lot of residents that came and spoke out of that neighborhood.
So I think there would be minimal changes to the parcels on the east. I think the closest would be this kind of pod of single-family rear-loaded homes that would see some change. The townhomes here, those lot widths would change by 2 to 4 feet. But these homes would kind of create more of a consistent 40-foot wide lots.
So I'm trying to do the math. Like, so we're reducing the improved density on the single family homes,
Yes.
but adding in a couple more towns.
Yeah, I think a 3 or 4 unit increase overall. It's a very small change in the density ratio, but a change nonetheless. And when you read the general statutes, that does require an amendment to the master plan. Yes.
Right.
Well, I mean, but they are, well, they potentially are, but they're just reducing the 32 and the 26.
Right, so it's 22.
To just the two, like the 40 and the 22 to 24, something like that.
Yeah, so they're eliminating the 26-foot and 32-foot wide rear-loaded homes. So it would just be 40-foot wide rear-loaded. And then they're changing the townhome dimensions from 22 to 24 feet. They're eliminating the 22-foot wide townhome, and they just have 20 or 24-foot wide townhomes. The end units would be 24 feet, and the interior units would be 20 feet wide. And so they're eliminating the 26 and 32-foot wide rear-loaded single-family homes, and just having that one housing type. And we are seeing a lot of requests to reduce lot widths from previously approved plans, but I think we're seeing a lot of front-loaded homes being requested to reduce that width. Not so much rear-loaded homes.
These would still be rear loaded.
Yes.
Office.
And total, how many, there's still, what, 4 different house types here?
Yes, so there would be front-loaded, single-family homes on 60-foot wide lots, rear-loaded, single-family homes on 40-foot lots, and then rear-loaded townhomes on 20 or 24-foot wide lots. So kind of reducing it down to 3. The 26-foot wide rear-loaded single-family home. So that would be kind of the row home or shotgun home, like in more of a downtown urban setting. Those really narrow homes. There's some in downtown Raleigh, kind of also really popular in places like New Orleans.
So what is the net gain? You're losing some, but what's the net gain?
3 units.
3 units.
Yep, going from 184 to 187.
But we're losing 2 different. But we're losing these different architectural styles.
Yes.
I think the confusing part is that we're taking the middle out and then running with it.
It's 2 ends.
Yes, exactly.
And so how it balances out is when we're all going to get more housing units.
Right.
But we don't get as many
Well,
types. But we are getting this new type.
because when I made my comment, I was feeling some kind of way, and then you said what you said, and I was like, well, maybe. And then now I've kind of like come back around, and I'm like, oh, no.
Because the way I understood it, I was like, oh, that's for me. But I was like, no, now that we've broken it down.
So this builder doesn't believe in variety is the size of line.
Their thoughts are that they have a lot of variety on the architectural renderings that they have, and the ability to have more choices and more finishes and more architectural styles to choose from on kind of more uniform lots. So,
I mean, I think part of what kind of bothers me is that we approved the original plan like literally a month ago. And so, it's kind of like, well, you're not even gonna, you're right, you're not even gonna wait a month to see.
and they haven't submitted construction drawings yet based on the originally approved master plan or potential changes, so, right, they didn't have a builder.
So now we have a builder that is, these are type of standard houses. And they're trying to fit what we do into the plan that a developer may put out.
Mhm.
So this is the best that they can do as a builder. I need to say this out loud, so I'm like processing it, but like this is the, not, yeah, you're. It's what they choose to do. It's what they choose, but I'm saying, what they're saying is, we build these houses, these 5 houses. What do you have? Okay, 3 of these we can fit in here. So the one we're asking for is one that's not in your inventory.
Right. I mean, because I'm fine with these, you know, with the houses and even some of the lot changes, but not on any of the others. And I don't know, I mean, like, I would be fine if there were multiple builders in there, you know, like,
That's the point.
so I mean, I don't really see a need to advocate changing what we have. You can have multiple builders.
So if I can offer you some advice.
So please.
So this is the space that we find ourselves in sometimes. Staff works very, very hard with the developers to could be dangerous if you consistently demonstrate that behavior to approve developments in harmony with your expectations only to accept for modest levels. So my piece of advice to you is simply this, is you get one opportunity to develop the properties right. Make sure it meets your expectations.
Well, remind us again how many lots are under construction, and how many units are already
Yeah, we've got
developed.
3,500 under construction, yeah.
Thousands. Yeah, I think we want to go right. And I think that's a good point. I think what we don't want to do on that, is just get something across the finish line and get back to the
Mhm.
because we got, I saw a big number of first started off. But
Now, if they want to go railroad bridge. Yeah.
All right, that is very helpful, thank you. And I wanted to finish out with some legislative updates, both from the state and kind of more potentially affecting us. So there are 3 bills that we're tracking in the General Assembly now. HB 1056 would allow for residential development in all commercial zoning districts by right. It would also prohibit parking minimum standards for both the minimum number required and the minimum size and dimensions required for parking spaces, which is generally something we're trying to move away from. But it also includes a provision that would prohibit us from regulating the location of where parking can go. So think back to the post office. Right now, any other use couldn't add parking in the front, and we want to bring the building front, have parking in the side and rear. The way that I read this bill, we might not be able to do that if this is approved. I don't know the kind of support that this has, but we have seen a lot of legislation proposed over the last few years to accelerate housing, add more housing in commercial zoning districts, reduce parking. So we'll continue to monitor that one. Senate Bill 999 would require us to expedite small-scale residential plan review. When you read it, it kind of says we can't require it to go through certain processes like special use permits or conditional district rezonings, but it also says that this legislation is not intended to supersede or skirt any zoning regulations. So it doesn't really make sense to me, but I think the intent of it would be to encourage municipalities to speed up plan review, especially for smaller scale residential projects. I think we do a really good job of plan review time in Knightdale, so maybe they're using us as kind of a guiding post and would require all other communities to speed up to match our output. And then SB 1069 is a bill that's been introduced a few times over the last few years that would allow for inclusionary zoning, which would give us the power to compel developers of residential, primarily kind of multifamily residential projects to include affordable housing units or other things within it that would benefit the community as a whole, and not just kind of have certain limitations that we have now. Again, that's something that has been introduced a lot and hasn't gotten far in the process, but I think it's gaining a little bit more momentum each time it's introduced and a little bit more support. So hopefully we'll see something move there.
One question.
Yeah.
With the commercial and residential and commercial zones, it's on the surface not something that I think any of us would be opposed to. How, it's a by right is what I'm hearing. You get a lot of by right commercial districts. So in our processes here, that would mean as long as they're following our UDO, otherwise
Yes.
they can build in the commercial zone.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if they wanted to add some apartments into the Knightdale places, they would still have to follow our UDO and build a product that
Exactly.
we've already determined is acceptable.
Yep. Or if they want to build single-family homes on the Boulder Ridge tract that's zoned highway business, they would have to be 80-foot wide lots for front-loaded homes. So if they could do that, but all of the rest of the zoning standards for that one would remain in effect. Something else to make you all aware of, if you haven't taken a look, the North Carolina chapter of the American Planning Association recently released their Housing Choice Needs and Policies report. This was started as a statewide survey and case studies that looked at ways to accelerate housing, provide more housing choice and opportunities, and kind of looked at the needs, some of the barriers, and best practices to address housing challenges. The report states that North Carolina has a 760,000 housing unit gap. So we need, 750,000 new homes across the state. And the majority of those homes, it says 54% of those homes should be affordable. And it has 4 main areas of focus, looking for ways to collaborate, updating land use regulations, looking for ways to streamline construction and development, and then financing. There are a number of things within this report that Knightdale currently does. We have completed a housing needs assessment. We've invested in infrastructure across town to attract that growth. We have started an affordable housing trust fund, and we've partnered with housing authorities like Habitat for Humanity. We have our comprehensive plan and, again, our affordable housing plan. We recently adopted ordinance to allow for accessory dwelling units in any residentially zoned parcel. And we're working with developers as they create HOAs in Union Park. All of those single-family homes are allowed to have accessory dwelling units on them, so that it's not prohibited in their HOA covenants. And then from a construction standpoint, we have made process changes to help speed it up. We've minimized reviews where we can, although it really depends on the engineer and their proficiency and ability to create plans that are more consistent. So not every project has to go through 12 cycles of construction drawing review. Some areas where we could see more investment or more focus on in Knightdale would be land disposition and working with private partners to create more affordable housing options on town-owned land, working with additional housing authorities, not just Habitat for Humanity, but other housing authorities like Raleigh Land Trust and DHIC. We can advocate for inclusionary zoning at the state level, and we can do things to facilitate infill residential and promote more missing middle housing. That would include allowing for townhomes, duplexes, triplexes by right. Right now, those are all required conditional district rezonings. But if there's a way to kind of right-size it, which I think there is, that could be something that we bring to you in a future work session as a potential text amendment to kind of accelerate some missing middle housing potentially. And then to update infrastructure standards, we recently went through this to update our construction manual, but if there are additional elements that we can look at, we will certainly do that as well. And so happy to answer any questions on this report or some of the actions that we're taking, or potentially bring forward some text amendments that might help to address some of these issues if you have any thoughts.
Well, I'm glad you're looking at this. It's a great report, and it's desperately needed. I think we are doing a good job. One thing I think about is also trying to, the naturally occurring affordable housing is trying to maintain, at least as long as we can, some of that. Folks are buying and flipping and raising rent prices as they are. Another one, and this I think this dovetails right into it, is we do have in our jurisdiction some mobile home parks, and that's something I would love for us to dig in a little bit. I think DOT does a great job when a new project comes through. A lot of this is different. Some people are just straight out renting. But there are a lot of people that actually own those units, and that's all they can afford. They're paying lot rent, but, you know, when a new development comes along and says you have 180 days, whatever it takes, Carrie, I think, ran into this, and people literally have units there that they cannot move. They have thousands of dollars invested in it, and that's their home, and they can't move it. They have to go, I mean, it puts them on the street, I think, in some cases. So I definitely would like for us to look at that and just go ahead and put it out there. If a developer comes along and looks to purchase one of these properties, that there's, you know, you need to try to figure out how to move some of these units or provide some money to people, because it is different than just paying rent, where you could just go, literally go somewhere else and pay rent.
Yeah.
So I'd love for you to take a look at that one as well.
Sure.
Kevin, I will say this, as a board member for DHIC, we definitely will be interested in any public-private partnerships to expand that scope of affordable workforce housing. But I also think that the, you know, presentation given earlier around the opportunity zones, as that's flushed out and we kind of see what those boundaries look like, then we can definitely engage further on the exploration around what that may entail, whether it's LIHTC or whether it is standalone single-family workforce housing. So would be interested, once we know that that is finalized, particularly in the opportunity zone space, but then also just that opening of public-private partnership. As you all see spaces and opportunities, I'd be more than happy to pass that forward to the development team for DHIC.
Thank you.
Believe me, I sat in a public hearing for anyway, much longer than this. Can you briefly tell us again, I know I've read it, but missing middle, just missing middle housing, where are we missing it, or are we getting it, and sort of what is it and what might be there?
I think we're starting to get it a little bit more. We have a lot of townhomes approved and under construction and, you know, occupied over the last few years. But missing middle housing is more than just townhomes, so that would be duplexes, triplexes, cottage courts. So Mallard Cove has those cottage court units incorporated within that. Linden Oaks has a number of different housing options within that, including duplexes. So there's a large segment of housing between townhomes and large single-family homes that we're getting some of, but we're not getting everything right now. And so we'll work more to see what kind of opportunities we have there. The last legislative update I have, it was a joint public hearing that's going to come to you later this month. The North Carolina Department of Public Safety has published some recommended updates to flood damage prevention ordinances. Our current flood plain damage prevention ordinance is mirrors the previous recommended regulations from the state. And so they've made some additional recommendations that we're looking to incorporate, including beefing up some of the elevation and flood proofing certificate requirements, providing a little bit more meat in our enforcement standards, and then really prohibiting structural fill within floodplains. So you think back to kind of the discussion that we had with Harper Preserve and Rainier Lake Drive, that has some structural fill with that street. That project is fully entitled. They have their floodplain development permit, but if that project were to come in tomorrow, potentially they wouldn't be allowed. They would have to reroute that street there. Compliance with these regulations is required for Knightdale residents and the town overall to participate in the National Flood Insurance Program, and the community rating system. So this provides subsidized flood insurance for properties, whether they're in a flood zone or not. The CRS is a voluntary incentive program that kind of goes above and beyond the minimum NFIP standards, and it helps to reduce that rate even more, and it also provides more flood protection than the minimum federal level. So we're a member of the NFIP and the CRS, and we're looking to make sure we stay consistent there. And then finally, just looking at some projects overall, we've talked about some of these already, but projects along Old Cruise Road, Robertson Street are all moving forward. Everbrook Academy is the daycare that is proposed at the Haywood Glen commercial out parcel at Old Knight and Hodge Road, or Horton Road. Union Park Phase 2 and the Amanda Center are moving forward. Big Oak Court Vets, Mallard Cove, and Parkside at Westlake, first 3 phases there. Harper Reserve was finally approved. Those construction drawings, I think they won the award for the most construction drawings submitted at a baker's dozen there. We've talked about the items that are going to be coming to you later this month, and then a trio of projects are moving forward for their final plats. Weldon, phases 1 and 2. They're waiting on the pump station in that to be certified by the city of Raleigh, and then that whole development will come online probably around the same time. Brio, phase 2, so this is the single-family homes on the west side of Brio, south of the creek, that DRB will be building in, and then Old Milburnie Village, which has been renamed Brio as well. So that's on the north side of the creek, phases 1 and 2. We reviewed that plat, and they are getting close to reporting that as well. Happy to answer any questions about any of these projects or any others, if there are any that we haven't gone over yet this evening.
I have
appreciate everyone's time.
one question, and it's probably more for Dustin. And it came to mind when you said that about the the pump station. Did we ever get finalization with our discussions with the city of Raleigh regarding our sewer capacity improvements on, wasn't it one of our lines that we were running into downtown? So, yeah.
City of Raleigh worked with the developer to figure out a way to move some of that supply or the capacity to make that project work. Weren't they force maining some of the northern flows off to allow some additional capacity? Wasn't that the outcome? Right. Yeah. So they were able to move some flow from some existing uses to another line to allow that to work right now. But as far as them increasing the capacity of that outfall line, I have not had any headway on that at this point. It would be something that they would have to include in the future, though, because obviously there's a lot of neighborhoods and a lot of flow coming down that is a cause for concern there. But they do know about it, so they're supposed to be looking at that as a plan. But we haven't heard anything since. Yeah, they were able to move it to a different outfall with some force main work on some other projects and relieve the issue on that line.
And we'll continue to be in that discussion about increasing for just future capacity in general.
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I guess since this is a work session, we're all together, there was an email about the Parkstone development, and well, we're still talking about development services, aren't we? Anyway, they were talking about making a couple of changes, and so if we consider those, does that opens the whole case again, right? Because I know that I would have loved to seen another sidewalk on the other side of the little cut through that goes to the other shopping center. And if there'd be a way to get at least a 3-way stop or something in there for traffic calming. But those are a couple things that I think about that I'd love to see, and that might be an opportunity to explore some of those again. But anyway, that was sort of my comment, and I don't know if you had any feedback on sort of what they're asking about.
Yeah, so they're asking for a reduction in overall density of the site, lower the number of units, and to lower the square footage of the non-residential ground floor retail. on the site from what was previously approved, and that would require an amendment to the previously approved master plan. I think probably the fourth amendment to that project. But to this point, we've seen some very, very limited detail plans and haven't reviewed anything that kind of gives us a sense of where they're going.
I'm sorry, Latacious, I do have one. But it's short and quick. So earlier I sent an email about the idea of a wildlife overlay district on our Mingo Creek Trail and some ideas surrounding incorporating that into our stormwater master plan and possibly qualifying for some grants off of that. And I just wanted to bring that up here in the public forum. I know we've kind of discussed it and everybody seems to be sort of rowing in the same direction, but kind of hoping to give staff a direction to kind of explore that and maybe bring us back a recommendation, just as long as we're all in agreement. All right. Do you need any more direction to investigate that?